Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Angela, and I started filming and then thought I wasn't filming, and then I stopped it, and apparently it was. So I just did part 1 to Candy Soul and Soil's Anatomy of a Deck Collection. Part 1 was unused decks, and she had 10 prompts for it. I actually had another prompt added to it, so I had 11 prompts. That is uploading right now. And then I'm doing part 2 now, which is always grab decks. So it's kind of the opposite of unused decks. That was unused or rarely used decks. This is decks that you're always using and always grabbing for. So there's 10 prompts on this one. There's a couple more on some than others. So let's get into it. So for question 1, it is storage or location matters. And she had it where she had it where it was always on her altar, always out. And I don't have an altar. I don't use an altar. I have one giant bookshelf where all my decks are on. So it was kind of hard to narrow down. But I decided to go with my number 3 deck of all time because 1 and 2 are going to be used later in this prompts. So I thought we would add in the Encore Tarot by Cheryl Marchetti. As the my first always use deck, the location matters, and it's Gilded in Red. This is my number 3. If I ever could only have like 5-10 decks, this would be number 3. I fell in love with his artwork very early in my tarot journey. When I found this deck, it was out of print. I was so sad about it because I never thought I would have this deck, and then suddenly he came back in print with a bunch. And I snatched it as soon as it was available, and I have not looked back. This deck is phenomenal. I love it. I was so afraid of using it because of the gilding at first, and then I was like, you know what? Screw that. I'm using it, and it's been fantastic. And I was trying to find the moon card because I always want to show it after I've got it in here, but and they're all different bordered. This is one of the few decks I have that's got borders that I don't mind. Oh, look at this. This is the reason I bought this deck. This moon card is fantastic. It's my favorite moon card ever. It's just stunning. This freedom she's got going on there. It's amazing. So that is the Encore Tarot by Cheryl Marchetti. It's one of the first decks that got me on my journey of buying a bunch. I have like 6 of his decks now. So, number 2. Specific ongoing job. What decks you have that specific jobs? And this deck is not, it's in my top 5 favorite deck of all time. The Stretch Tarot by J.E. Stretch. It is an indie deck as well as the Encore Tarot was an indie deck. I've edged it in this like navy blue to match the backs. It came out perfect. This deck is used specifically for past lives readings. I started to branch out to mediumistic reads. But I bought this deck with the sole intention of using it for past lives because I saw it on somebody's channel and I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I had pictured in my mind for a past life tarot deck. And I was so grateful that it was still in print and I was still able to get it. It's still available today. If you go into jestretch.com, it's there. He's got a Lenormand deck. Couple different Lenormand decks, I think. They're all stunning. I'm not interested in buying anything other than the tarot deck. And this deck has yielded some pretty crazy past lives. It's just, I could never be without this deck. I could never be far from this deck. For that reason. And I do have, did I grab another one for that? It's in my top 5 of all time favorite decks. So, yeah. Where did my questions go? Yeah, so that has a specific... I have quite a few that have specific jobs, but that one is the first one I always think of because it's the only one I really use for past life stuff. And I have another tarot deck, the Art History Tarot for past lives. I either use them in combination or I just use this one. So there's that. So next question we have, decks you're studying, and I don't really take the time to study because I'm a intuitive reader, so I don't really need to study decks. But the Lorenzi Tarot by Irene Lorenzi, it is a U.S. Games publication, just came out in the beginning of October, I think, or the end of September. I think the end of September, yeah. The last day of September. This deck is weird and strange. It reminds me of my Dream Keepers Tarot, but for some reason this one, I feel more drawn to taking the time out to study it and find out exactly what the creator was thinking with this deck. I feel like it's people being created or animals being created, if that makes any sense. And they're like, you see them either being put together like mannequins or, what's the word I'm looking for? Or becoming animated. Or like this would be like an animal that was created that no longer exists because it just didn't work out. There's a string card. I mean, this deck is stunning. And it's one of those decks and I'm just like, I feel it's very ethereal and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Spiritual in a way. Like creator, like the creator of everything created this deck. And that's interesting, and I'm studying it to kind of find out why I feel that intensely about it. Because I just got it. So, that was number 3. Number 4, it's a vibe. And I have a couple decks for this, and I was thinking about another deck. Did I grab that other deck? Yeah. But I have 2 decks here. This is the, let me pull it out of the big box. The Mystical Shaman Oracle card by Colette Baron-Reid, Alberto Villalodo, and Marcela Lobos. It's a collaboration deck. And then the Ancestral Path Tarot by Julie Kichi-Watts. This is Hay House. This is U.S. Games publication. These are the only 2 decks in my collection. And this is the only Oracle deck I've ever edged. For some reason, I feel very uncomfortable edging my Oracle decks. Don't know why. This is the only one I've ever felt drawn to do that with. This deck is beautiful, and it gives me these 2 are in this category because they both give me the exact same vibe. As if I've owned these decks in a previous life, even though that's not possible because they weren't existing prior to my lifetime. But I feel like there's this ancientness to me that these decks feel like, and they feel like it's not coming home necessarily as I've owned them before, and I'm so immediate. I was so immediate familiar with them that I'm like, what's happening? Like, why do I feel this kinship with these decks? This instant connection that it's like I've owned them before. It's very weird. But these are the only 2 decks in my collection I have that vibe with. The only 2 decks. Even though they are not, neither of them are in my top 10 favorite decks ever. So, that's weird. But the artwork on both decks are just stunning decks. And yeah, I feel this very connected. I think this one has a lot to do with the Native American artwork in it, but yeah, and the other one has a lot of Native American artwork in it as well. So I think that could be part of it, is like my ancestors are like, ooh, yeah, I would have picked that deck too. Then we have, the only reason it's in this category is because I saw it on somebody else's part 1 where they don't use the deck because it creeps them out. It is the Guardian Tarot. This deck is the only deck I have in my collection. And it was, this is Red Feather publication. I edged it in the light pink and purple or blue of the backs. Came out great, I think. Yes, some of them have hollow eyes. But I feel like this deck is a look into beings that live alongside us, but in another dimension. Maybe spirits, maybe guides, maybe just other beings from other worlds, but they're living alongside of us in this same world, but in another dimension, if that makes any sense. Like, sometimes you get glimpses of them, and sometimes you don't. And this deck, to me, takes you into their world and what they're seeing, and it's just very fascinating to me, this deck, because of that. So it's very interesting. And that is decks that give me a certain vibe. So number 5. It Feels Like Home. And this is my number 2 deck ever. It should be my number 1, but my number 1 is going to be used somewhere else. This is almost, if you watch any of my channel, you're going to know what number 1 and number 2 are. This deck almost has the exact same vibe. The Bone Stone and Earthflush Tarot, that red gilding. Artwork by Anatorian. It's an indie deck that is no longer available. It's out of print. It's stunning deck. It almost has the exact same vibe as my favorite deck ever. There's just one slight thing different to me, which I don't know. If I could only ever have 2 decks in my life, this one and the first one would be it. It feels like coming home, but this deck feels that way in a slightly different way, in that coming home could mean coming home to a different or an alternate universe, if that makes any sense. That's what this deck feels like for me. And I've done mediumistic reads with this one. It was just fantastic. But I feel like this is also another, like, otherworldly, like, it's another universe. It's a universe of humans just like us, but they're slightly different. That's what I get from this deck. And that's why feels like home, but it feels like I'm coming home to a different place than Earth. So, that's number 5. Number 6 is It's Easy. And there's no better deck, this has got a dragonfly on it, than an RWS deck. I mean, everybody knows RWS. This is my 2.0 tarot off of Make Playing Cards. This is the deck I actually started liking RWS with, because prior to that, I hated it. I'm like, I don't get the hype. And then I found this deck, and I'm like, it's so beautiful. So beautiful. So beautiful. Look at that Empress. Like, come on. It's stunning, and it's straight and to the point. And if you know RWS, it's so easy to pick up and read, and you're in and out in a reading in a couple minutes. Like, it's just that simple. And at the time I got this, and at the time I started trying to read with it, I needed simple, and it did its job. It's done its job. If I ever usually pull out an RWS, it's usually this one. And if you can tell, it's worn because it's been used a lot. So that is It's Easy. I don't know why I would need to explain that any further. And she mentioned one of her easy decks was the Lightseers Tarot, which that's my favorite deck of all time. If I could only ever have one deck, it would be the Lightseers. And she mentioned that when she pulls out decks, that she often harkens back to the RWS. And it's funny she said that, because I harken back to what the Lightseers looks like. So I found that quite interesting, that she'll like, oh yeah, in RWS it's this, and I'm like, in Lightseers it's this. So I just found that interesting, and I was cracking up when she said that. I'm like, I think the same thing, but of the Lightseers, as she was showing the Lightseers for the easy deck. So number 7, I feel like I missed one. Nope. Number 7 is I Need a Hug, and that is my Lightseers. This is the mass market by Hay House. Chris Ann is the creator. This deck is my best friend. I edged it in this turquoise. I've had this forever. There are no words for this deck. I don't care how many decks I acquire. If I could only ever have one deck, it would be this deck. It got me through the really deep heat of the pandemic where I was on work furlough. I had no idea if I was going to work again or when, and we needed money. And I was stressed out and paranoid that I was going to get COVID at any second because nobody was adhering to the rules and everybody was getting it. And I was just like, I was terrified for my kids. I was terrified for myself. I was terrified for my husband, who stayed working the whole time, by the way. It was amazing. But this deck, it is literally the best friend I've never had. It listens, it's fair, it's sweet, it's gentle, it doesn't get crazy. It's exactly what I picture in a best friend because I'm that way with my friends. So it's that friend that I needed to have in return that I've never really gotten. And I love it for that. And that is why this will always be my number one. So, that's my hug deck. I have very few hug decks. Number 8, I need a kick in the bum. Ironically, it is the Sacred Creators Oracle by Chris Ann. Where the Light Seers is sweet and gentle and the best friend you never had, the Sacred Creators is not. Or it's that best friend that is just very crass, very much a same cardstock. It's also published by Hay House. Same batch, just different colors. This deck is the deck that will slap you in the face hard and be like, I told you this 10 times. And the first time I used this deck is exactly what I got. I actually blinked because the card I drew, I felt like I had been slapped in the face so hard that when all of a sudden somebody slaps you out of the blue and you weren't expecting it, you blink because you're like shocked that what just happened. That's the reaction I had to this deck. And almost every time I use it, that's the same reaction I get with this deck. It is not quiet. It is not sweet. It is not gentle in any way, shape, or form. And I love it for that because there are times where I need a straight shooter. I need that harsh reality. Because maybe I've been lingering too long with my hug deck. So, I just love how these two are the same creator, same publishing company, and yet they do two very different things for me, which I love. So, next we have, that was number 8. So, number 9, it's Talkative. And the only other deck I have that will slap you in the face, the Tarot de la Nuit. This is a darker deck. It's published by Los Scarabero. I now have the Oracle that came out this year. I'm not a big a fan as I am this deck, but it's still pretty cool. The backs are gorgeous. It is that thicker, when you get a 2-part box from them, cardstock. This deck is not afraid to slap you in the face either, and it likes to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then it will turn around and smack the crap out of you. And I love it for that also. It's a very beautiful deck. Very dark, nouveau kind of deck. And I love it. I just love it. And it doesn't stray very far from me. But it's a very talkative deck as well. I have a couple, I don't have many that talk like this, but this is one of very few that it likes to hear itself talk and then tell you off. That's pretty much what sums up this deck. And I like it. I like that thought process. So number 10 is it's passion linked. The deck that is linked to other passions. My other passion is writing. I've always known I wanted to be a writer. I've always known I was going to be a writer. And I have 2 decks for this. One is the Tarot of Japanese Poetry. It's an indie deck. I just got it this year off of Kickstarter. It is stunning, and it does haiku poetry. The suits are like renamed into seasons. I don't care. It's an amazing deck. I've used it quite often this year. any deck that I could get that has to do with writing or poetry, I'm all over it. So that is the Tarot of Japanese Poetry. And I'm trying to get them all in before my time runs out, because that was just like 15 minutes, and now we're at almost 20. And then we have the Poe Tarot. It actually has his, and this is by Red Feather. It's a mass market deck. I love it. Love it. I've been using it quite a bit this month because it's October. Beautiful. And it's got his poetry on it. It's been, the suits have been renamed, but I don't care. It's black and white. I don't care. It's awesome. It has to do with my writing, again. And I've decided to use this deck in a, like, whatever quotes at the bottom. That quote is what I'll be using in like a short story. I haven't done it yet, but yeah. I've been trying to find other ways of using this deck other than as a Halloween-y deck. But that is all my prompts for part 2 of the Anatomy of a Deck collection. Always reach for decks. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, don't hesitate to comment below. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification button so you're alerted to any future videos. And you guys have a good night. Bye.